Awesome. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. And then as people join, they'll see the part that matters most about from the actual panelists. But first, I just want to welcome everybody. I'm so grateful to be introducing our first webinar of the 2024 webinar series that Reach Out and Read Illinois is hosting. This one is on the power of representation in early literacy, and then we have another in March and another in April, and we'll share those details at the end. But all of this is made possible through our recent partnership and funding with the Illinois Department of Public Health. And so we're just very glad to be here, very glad to be doing this. We'll share a little bit about what Reach Out and Read is, just so that you all are aware too. So I will jump in, and we're going to keep participants muted, and we'll be monitoring that. So if you find yourself muted, that's why, just so that we can make sure there's no interruptions, at least for the time being. Okay, so for today, we're going to just briefly go over what Reach Out and Read is, because I'm not sure everyone is aware of what the program is and what it entails. And so we'll cover that, and then we'll jump into the panel. That'll be the majority of this meeting. And then the last 10 or so minutes will be audience Q&A. So feel free to put questions in the chat throughout. The team will be monitoring that and making sure that we pass that off to the moderator. And then we'll leave you with some final updates, and we'll be out of here by 1 p.m. Okay, so what is Reach Out and Read? Reach Out and Read is a national model. It's implemented across the country, and it looks the same everywhere, but it's kind of done differently. So in Illinois, we're actually a program of the Illinois chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the AAP recognizes Reach Out and Read as its only early literacy program that it endorses. So I think that speaks to just the fidelity of the program, the metrics of the program, the evidence of it, all of that. So Reach Out and Read really drives relational health. It improves the relationship with caregiver and child, and also pediatrician and family, modeling good parenting child interactions, all about the serve and return. So the doctor enters the exam room with a children's book, and this is for a well child visit for a 0 to 5-year-old, and sees how the baby interacts with the book. Are they following it with their eyes? Are they able to point to things? Can they, like, if they're old enough, are they saying words that represent the characters or the animals in the book? They're using it to assess their development and also talk about anticipatory guidance. So it's a really great program. I mean, as a parent, I'm always just wishing my pediatricians will do this, because I think it also just puts the child at ease. It really makes the parent more engaged and present in the visit too. So it's just a win-win for everybody. There's a lot of evidence to show the effects of how it improves development for the child, how it also improves, it has fewer canceled visits for the clinic. So many good outcomes. And pediatricians are a trusted source. So the 0 to 5 population, they're not always in school or childcare. And so this is a really nice way to emphasize the importance of reading, the importance of talking and singing and interacting with your child as much as possible. So that is like the very, very big, brief overview of what Reach Out and Read is. And I just wanted to provide that before we jump in, because today is about representation and early literacy. So we deeply care about that at Reach Out and Read, but it is part of this larger model. Okay, so I'm going to pass it off actually at this point to Dr. Turnock, who is going to be our moderator for the day.
Thank you, Christina. I appreciate that, and the reminder to all about what Reach Out and Read is. So we are going to start today by having all of us introduce ourselves, all of the panel members, and then we'll get started talking through some questions. So I'm Brooke Turnock. I'm a general pediatrician. I work for PCC Community Wellness Center, which is a federally qualified health center on the west side of Chicago. Dr. Jindal.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Monique Jindal. I am a primary care doctor for both adults and kids at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and I also conduct research on how racism impacts healthcare delivery. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Keenan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Keenan. I am also a general pediatrician at the University of Illinois, and I have also research in racial discrimination and trauma.
Victoria?
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Martinez. I was a public librarian on the west and southwest sides of the city of Chicago. I work for the Chicago Public Library, and I'm currently a special projects librarian with the Department of Children's Services and Family Engagement for the Chicago Public Library.
And Janae.
Hello, everyone. I'm Janae Harris. I'm an author, poet, and community advocate, and I also serve on the board of Reach Out and Read, Illinois, and I'm happy to be here with all of you today.
Hey, thanks so much. So we have a great diverse panel with lots of different disciplines, but all invested in early childhood and reading. So to start us off, how do books serve as both windows and mirrors for children's development? Dr. Jindal?
Yeah, so this term of kind of thinking about books as windows and mirrors, that's the idea that children can read a book and see themselves in it, so like a mirror. And then they can also, I'm sorry, they can also see a window into the outside world. So it offers children a way to see a different world, whether that's real or imagined, allows them to learn things that are new, to take a few steps in someone else's shoes, to experience a world beyond their own. But it also helps them find their own place in the world by getting reflected back to them experiences that are very similar to their own.
Exactly. And I'll just add on to that, that I believe that it definitely helps kids foster an early love of reading, especially when they see themselves in books very early on. And it creates that empathy for others because that early exposure right from the beginning helps them to see that the world is so big and so diverse. And that early exposure is just, it's invaluable to all kids. So, yeah.
And I would say the doctor's office is just the perfect place to introduce those type of concepts because there's already a trust in that relationship that's kind of self-made in terms of you have individuals trusting the care of their children with you. And a lot of times you can, and sometimes books can be scary, especially in terms of like, can I read this to my child? Am I getting the words correctly and things of that nature? But a lot of times it's not about the words on the page, but just the experience with that parent and the child in terms of being able to point out animals. You can make up a whole story on your own that has nothing to do with the words that are on that page. I've done it many times because sometimes I don't have my glasses and everything just looks blurry. But again, the experience is nonetheless just as important because we're going over colors, we're going over letters, we're going over those different development things that we're looking for. And within that doctor's office, you can mirror because again, it comes easy for me because I had a good teacher in terms of my mom. She was in education. So these are things that happen daily in my household, but you can't take for granted that that's everybody's lives. So if we're doing this uniformly through medicine or through pediatric care, we can make sure all kids have this experience as well.
And if I can also add that it also like just validates that they too are important and can be part of these stories that like for me growing up there weren't a lot of books that had diverse characters, so it validates me as a person when I see books that look like me, and it also gives them possibilities, right? There's a possibility that you can also be an author because you see the picture of the author in the book. You also can do this, and for a lot of our communities, the exposure to that is very limited. So I think books is a really great way to introduce and encourage them, you know, to think beyond what their normal day-to-day life is.
Great, thanks. How about what role specifically for pediatricians do we play in promoting diverse representation through literature, both in the office and outside of the office? Dr. Keenan, what's your experience been with that?
I think it's a great opportunity for all involved, regardless of their race or gender or things of that nature. There's been studies time and time again that says diversity is important to both sides of that coin, both the underrepresented population as well as that majority. Because again, going back to that mirrors and windows metaphor, it's important that you're able to see things that reflect you, but also be able to appreciate the things that are important or kind of cool. I'm sorry, I'm nerdy. Kind of cool about other populations as well. And it's important that we start those conversations when they're young because there's going to be a lot of external factors, whether it's kids at school or the media and things of that nature, that are telling individuals that, nope, this isn't right, or we don't want to support diversity and things of that nature. When you can put these ideals in kids at such a young age, our hope is that we'll build their resiliency in terms of being able to withstand some of those negative things that they are going to encounter, unfortunately, as they grow older.
Just add to that, getting along with what Dr. Keenan said about starting this early, we do know that kids notice race at a very early age. So as early as 3 months, kids are noticing race-based differences. By age 3, children can express actually explicit forms of racial bias. So that might look like teasing other kids, things like that. By age 5, kids are conscious of the stereotypes that are existing around them. By age 8, they're aware of the social norms and they actually are able to develop unconscious or implicit biases. And by age 12, many children are becoming kind of set in their beliefs. So that, 0 to 5 range really early on, thinking about this is so important because we know from a medical standpoint that developmentally, those 5 years are critical. And they're really sensitive periods of development. And kind of also along with what Dr. Keenan was saying, that they're getting all these external factors. So thinking about how we all were socialized and thinking about how our kids are being and our patients are being socialized. So there really is this concept of racial socialization that you're getting all these messages that are either verbal messages or nonverbal messages that tell you kind of the meaning of what it is to be your race, what the meaning of it is to be different from the people around you, and what it means like to face discrimination. And so those messages actually help kids shape their own identity, shape how they might identify with others or not identify with others, and how they feel in a group, how they might interact within a group, and also tells them about their position in the overall world. So yeah, I'll stop there.
That's okay. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us within our offices too, especially participating in Reach Out and Read, to be able to intentionally choose books that are diverse and representative of our patient population. I know I love holding up the early board books with pictures of baby faces, but different baby faces, and watching them look at themselves reflected in those pictures.
And I would just like to say, as a book nerd, I'm kind of excited in terms of how literature is evolving over time. And when we talk about diversity, we're not just talking about race. We're talking about gender. We're talking about kids in wheelchairs. We're talking about kids with asthma. We're talking about the main character being someone from a single parent home. Again, a lot of that ties into that identity of who that child's going to be, and the ability to see those different personalities or vantage points in a positive manner does make a great difference.
Thanks. In your experience, how has exposure to diverse perspectives in books positively influenced the emotional and social development of young patients? I think that we've touched on this a little bit, but particularly seeing their social and emotional development within diverse perspectives in books. Victoria, have you seen any of that in the library circles?
Yeah, so which is a story that I have for later, but an interaction that I had with a child. But I think it does, like I mentioned earlier, like lets them know that they too are a part of this world that we live in, right? Unless you give kids these resources, these books that not only highlight their culture, but also others. Like it really, I've seen a lot of kids be really confident and be excited to read, which makes me super happy as a librarian, but also like the interaction that they have with their parents. They sit down at the library and talk about the specific part of the culture, right? El Dia de los Muertos, they talk about it, and the parent goes on and on about like what they know and what they grew up with. And to me, that interaction between parent and child it's always beautiful to see. But you don't get that unless you find something special that they both can connect with.
And I know Dr. Jindal touched a little bit about the evidence and science behind the social and emotional development given exposure to diversity. Are you able to tell us a little bit more about how that exposure positively influences development?
Yeah, we know that exposure to diversity, also as Dr. Keenan was alluding to, for both children of color and children from the dominant culture or white children, has been associated with higher test scores, has been associated with kids being more likely to enroll in college, more likely to engage in critical thinking and problem solving, improved self-confidence, and enhanced leadership skills. And on the other side of that, the detriment of not exposing your child to diversity is also present there. So we know that kids who are not exposed to diversity are more likely to engage in stereotyping behaviors and engage in harmful biases. And we also know that those minoritized children or children from minoritized communities are also likely to bring on, feelings of negative self-identity, low self-esteem, even this idea of internalized racism, where you start believing some of the stereotype messages about your own group. So really, that's kind of the evidence behind why this is so important.
And I just like to add to that. Beyond that, we have an added benefit that we don't necessarily see or take account of, but that's the parents themselves who get exposure, who may not always have exposure to these diverse books. And all of a sudden, they show up at their pediatrician's office, and unexpectedly in their household, they're taking home books that now have the diverse characters. And it may not be something that they were drawn to initially, but it's allowing the opportunity not just to educate the kids about diversity and inclusion and all these other things that are important in society in general, but we're also presenting that to parents. And so when you think about the global or the greater impact that this has on families, it's huge.
And then I would also add to that, just think about we're also impacting that next generation of physicians. At a lot of our practices, we do have residents and medical students who may have not been exposed to things like this in their when they were younger. And our hope is by including them in this conversation, they can continue on to practice it within their practice, and again, help those kids that need it.
And can we share specific examples of how incorporating diverse books into practice has changed and contributed to a more inclusive environment in the healthcare world during our visits with patients, interacting with families in the waiting room, things like that?
I think it's a nice, as Dr. Keenan also said, it's a nice segue into your relationship with the family and how the family might interact with each other around some of these topics. So, talking about identity might not seem like the most obvious thing to do during a visit or the most comfortable thing to do, but the book allows for this tool to make it a little more less murky and more comfortable to say, here's a book that shows X, Y, and Z. And, because of that, you can start into those conversations. And that also is how you can start into those conversations with some of our trainees who might not really know how to use that language and have never really even tried to because they feel so uncomfortable about it. But the book is a nice tool to help with that.
And I would say it's changed the culture, I think, in the pediatrics clinic at UIC, because it's an expectation that they're getting their book. So there's sometimes the MA doesn't give it, and my little one's like, okay, but where's my book? And so it's not necessarily me giving it to them, but it's an expectation. I'm going to the doctor. I wonder what new book I'm going to get in my collection. And it's kind of awesome in terms of kind of to see that change and getting kids excited about reading in general, because we know early literacy is important. We know the more words a child is exposed to by the time they're 2, the higher that IQ is, the higher that achievement is. So programs like Reach Out and Read give us that opportunity to make sure those kids are getting that.
I agree. Then the team approach is really important as well. You mentioned medical assistants and assisting with that, and having buy-in from the support staff as well, who very often reflect the patients that we're seeing or are from the same neighborhood. They know each other. Having them advocate for and support reading and the diversity in books, I think has been really great. And I think Dr. Keenan mentioned too, it doesn't always have to be just about race. You know, I've been looking for books about kids with different kinds of behaviors, or like you said, different kinds of families, or kids that are on the autism spectrum, to help both parents and the patients have a better grasp on that. So, all right, what challenges have we encountered in diversifying our book collections, and how have you overcome those obstacles? Victoria, how's it been at the library?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you guys know, but with the way that we purchase our books, we have specific vendors, right, that we can purchase books from. And sometimes they have very limited selections. For a few years, they had very limited selections, right? So there was a point where we have to advocate for certain selections to be bought. There was a workaround, right, where we are also able to work with our local bookstores that specialize in diverse books. That we were able to create like a partnership, right? Where if there's a book that we think that we need in our collection because it's necessary to have that book, then we can outsource to our local bookstores that we partner with to see if they have those items available for us to be able to provide librarians the opportunity to purchase them. I think also as a system, like we've created cultural groups, right? And groups that focus on a specific topic, right? We have our diversity cultural committee, which focuses on everything that is a library and patrons with disabilities, right? So they are able to also give us insight on what type of books, right, we need to look into to be able to provide those in our libraries. We also have cultural committees, our Latinx committee, our African American history committee that also help us bring those selections to the forefront so that we're aware and that we make it easily accessible for you guys to be able to use, whether it's at your clinic or to recommend to families.
And I can add to that and just share about the process of publishing. It's a difficult one. And I would say I'm very grateful for the self-publishing route. Even as an educator with multiple degrees, taught at all levels, I have all this experience, told by many people, you know, your writing is great. However, it can be a years long process to get publication. And also, even when you self-publish, it's a very expensive process. And so you have to have access to the funds. So once again, it's kind of this circular trap that you're kind of closed in as you look for ways to do this. I was fortunate that I had the means and I was able to say, there's a lack of this. I want to create it. And so I went out and created it. And not everyone has that opportunity, but not just with children of color. I have a daughter who's immunocompromised. And so a lot of my love for Reach Out and Read stemmed from the fact that not only was it reading that I love, but also it allowed me this connection. And so in one of my books, we talked about COVID and the fact that she could not go outside during that time, and how to be able to tell that story and to just share that you are not alone. And oftentimes we find situations where kids feel like they are alone and that they're the only one who's in a certain situation. And when we can tell those stories and have others look at it and say, it's not just me, I can see my story reflected and benefit from that, it's so invaluable. And so, yes, the process can be hard. Getting your books out there can be very difficult, but there's so many ways now that we can go about it. And so I'm just working personally to get the message out, to work with other writers and other authors and let them know, look, we're here in Chicagoland. There's a lot of us. We can support each other. We can do editing for each other and all of those things that become cumbersome sometimes when you're going through the process. We're here to support each other. So having that network is super important.
And how did you choose some of the themes or messages within the books that you've published?
Well, it was really all about what was going on in my personal life and what I saw was lacking. My family moved around often, and I always share the story that my daughter went to 5 schools. And not because we were military, just because of my husband's career that took us different places. And so to get those opportunities, we moved whenever they were presented to us. And she became really shy. Can you imagine going to 5 elementary schools by the time you're in 3rd grade? and she didn't have very many friends. And so I started to write her notes every day. I wrote her a sticky note to just encourage her, speak to someone today, say something kind. And eventually I came home and she had wrote a note back to me. She put it on the wall and it said, "Thank you for all writing me all those sticky notes. It encouraged me." And we opened up the piano bench, and inside the piano bench were hundreds of sticky notes that over the time she kept, and she just stuck them all in there and she benefited from that. And so in that, there was a story. And I was like, you know what? I have to share this because in that moment, I knew that she had found her voice and that what I was doing was encouraging her. And I wanted others to know the same thing.
Yeah, that's a great example of a personal experience, and how that, how the diversity and adversity can impact children and can be explained in books and in literature. Do we have other stories, success stories on a personal level about how diversity or representation in literature has helped?
I mean, I think probably a lot of people can relate to the feeling of growing up and not really seeing yourself in the media and, in movies and books and shows. And I remember as a young girl just wanting to be like the kids that I was around, and that there was really, an idea of what beauty was to the dominant culture. And I never really felt like I fit that. So I wanted different hair. I wanted my skin to be lighter and all of these things. I have memories of people saying she's too dark to be considered pretty. And those instances really stick with you. And so I think about, like, for example, not my the new Little Mermaid that came out, and some people don't really understand why there's so much conversation around it. But I think about that, and I think about how if I had seen things like that, maybe I wouldn't have longed for this other person, longed to be someone different.
I think at the library, like I get to, especially when I was working out at my previous location in the Gage Park community, I got to see a lot of kids firsthand, how they reacted and how they received the books that were coming into the collection. If you guys know Gage Park Library is very, very tiny. It's probably one of our tiniest libraries in the system. So I had to really work on sizing down the collection and making sure that it was a worthy collection, right, for the community. I had purchased a book of the Camila Beginning Readers series. And one day a little girl with her mom comes in. She's probably like around 4 or 5. She goes into the beginning reader section because she loved her Mo Willems, her Elephant and Piggy books. And she looked at the spine label of the Camila books and she just yelled. So her mom and I were running towards her because we're like, what happened? But she was yelling out of excitement because the book had her name. Her name is Camila. And she grabbed the book. She said, "This is my book. This book is about me." She looked at the character on the front cover and she said, she's a little browner than me, but she has my brown hair. She looks like me. So she was really excited during the time that she was at the library to have that book in her hands and to see like, hey, like that's me. I am her. She is me, and just the reaction that her mom also had as well. And also just like it was mentioned earlier, just exposing kids to different experiences. I had a child who was really excited because she found the Ada Twist book, which is a young girl who was into science. She loved science. She loved talking about science. Every time she would come into the library, she would talk about science. And when I showed her the book, like her eyes just lit up and that became her favorite series. So yeah, it isn't just about characters that look like us, but also like their interest, right? So usually when I was working at the branch, when I would get my book list to see which books I wanted to order, I kept those scenarios in mind because as I was going through those lists, I knew that this person liked these types of books. I see this book here. Let me see if I can purchase this for them so that the next time that they come in, they have something else to look forward to.
And I would just say that there's power in words, whether it's talking verbally or even written on page. And it gives a lot of individuals just opportunity in terms of worlds they didn't think exist. The example that I always give in my life was more verbal, but again, my mom believed in us being busy during the summer. I was in a program every summer of my life. I have no idea what it feels like just to sit in a house and be free during the summer. Never had that experience. So one particular one was actually at UIC. Again, I'm from Chicago, and it was a science camp because again, I've been very persistent and I'm a science type kid. And there was a chemical engineer teaching the class, and she looked at me and she said, "You know what? You would make a good chemical engineer." So from that point on, when my mother's friends or my grandmother's friends would ask me, "Well, what do you want to be when you grow up?" I was like, "I am going to be a chemical engineer." It wasn't until I got to college and saw what that physical chemistry book looked like, and I said, I am absolutely not a chemical engineer. But again, just the idea of that sentence that someone randomly told me, probably didn't even think much of, impacted in terms of what I wanted to do or my trajectory in life. And again, this is coming from someone who was, I had two parents, they loved me. I went to Beasley and Whitney Young, so pretty good schools. So someone who has been told she's somebody from the beginning, but yet the stranger who saw something in me made that big of an impact. So think about our kids who don't get that at home, who don't have that access to someone saying, "Hey, I think you're great. I think you're wonderful. You are somebody." But the impact of that book and being able to say like, "Hey, they look like me and they are somebody. Maybe I can be somebody too." Again, it's just giving exposure. And there's a lot of power in what we say. And there's a lot of power in terms of what we write. And there's always little eyes and little ears watching. So I think these are great opportunities in terms of just helping kids see their full potential and not what the world thinks that they should be.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example and question that leads us to think about how the landscape of diversity books is evolving to incorporate diversity, not just kind of as a standalone category or, its own section in the bookstore, but how does it become really like an intrinsic element woven into the themes of literature? Janae, you probably have the most direct experience with
Yes.
that to start. Yeah.
I was going to say, the great thing is there's more of it, right? We can recognize that there's more diverse books. They're out there. We have more access. The negative side of that is that that draws in some negativity and that diverse books have been under attack. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that it's not loved and welcome in all places. However, clearly we all recognize the advantages of having them out there and having access to them. So I hope that as we continue to make more diverse, make more diverse books and make them more accessible, that we're just so flooded with them that you can't miss one, right? That when you go to get a book, that they're just there and it's part of the norm, right? When you read a book, it's just you're going to get a book, it's going to be diverse, and that's just what you experience. It's part of growing up. So kids don't have to decide. And so no one is deciding for them what's on the bookshelves, that they have options to so many things. So I think that's the really, really important part, is that we just continue to flood our spaces with reading that's accessible, that's inclusive, and that provides representation across the board. And that when it becomes available, when there's so much, you cannot not find it, right? So we want to make it so that when people are out there looking for it, it's just readily available.
Go ahead, Dr. Jindal. Did you have a?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think that your response also made me think about just the types of books we're thinking about, like in the realm of diversity. So, some places have gotten some, and, they're trying to work on it, but often will maybe flock to the ones that are about oppression or about fighting and, fighting justice and injustices and about those things, which I think are really important, but it's also really important to have those books that are just about kids being kids, about kids doing the really mundane. You might remember Corduroy with, the little black girl and her mom at the mall or whatever department store that was, and the bear. But I just wanted to add in that I think, being mindful of what the books look like while they're having diverse characters, but also what are the stories that are there and how can we think about that?
The Joy. And there's a new series about a barbershop, and actually was developed by a Black man who thought it was so important for the books not to all be serious. He was like, he wanted the kids to just go get in trouble and have fun like you see in general books, and not have it be where it's always just, like you said, learning about things of the past or learning about oppression or having to be strong all the time. Sometimes we just want to be silly and have fun. And those are the things that are important. And that's what helps us fall in love with reading. I always remember A Snowy Day, which was about nothing but taking a walk in the snow and dragging your stick along in the snow and making marks. And it's just a general day. It's just fun. But when kids can get lost in those kind of books, those are the things that are really important and that they go back to time and time again because they really enjoy reading the stories.
Yeah, those are great points. I love that. Yeah, because the tendency is for sure to make it about a lesson and a moral and we're just getting dirty. Nobody's teaching anything real serious. But we've talked a lot about diversity in books, but what does it really mean or look like to look for diversity in a book? What are we even talking about in regards to how we're I think pointing out or reading that kind of books to children in a way that highlight diversity? Victoria, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so when I think of diverse books, I think obviously of the characters, right? Are the characters a representation of those that are around us, of the communities that we work with, but also about experiences, right? Like it was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of books being published now that talk about what it feels like to grow up in a family with your brother in jail or mom is in jail, and like from the perspective of the kid, right? It's bringing it back to the experience of the child. It also doesn't have to be a heavy topic book. Like it was just mentioned, like books can be fun as well. But when we think about diversity, we think about elements like that expose kids to something that maybe they're not familiar with, right? Different cultures. Talking about something as simple as food. There's a board book. I'm not sure you guys have it, but there's one that talks about different like empanadas, like, and you learn a little bit about different cultures, right? So there's a broader sense of like what diverse books really is. But to me, generally, when I talk about diverse books, I talk about the characters within the story. The story itself can be a reflection of a topic that maybe we don't see in literature so often, right?
I
And I mean, it's fun just to sit on the library floor and just surround yourself with books and just try to figure out which one you're going to pick right now. So like the top three in my household right now, and I have two boys. There's one, Princess Pit Stop by Tom Engelberger. Again, it drew me because it had cars. So it's like, yes, in terms of cars. But this princess kicks butt. And it's cute the way that it's created because she beat Rumpelstiltskin, she beat the Three Bears, she beat like every character you can think of, those were her adversaries on the racetrack. And she was just dipping in, diving in, and kind of won at the end. And again, I'm in a house full of boys, but yet it's a book about female empowerment in terms of how she could accomplish anything. And again, it had some cars in there, so it got their interest a little bit. But again, an awesome book. And I would say Change sings a children anthem a little bit, a little bit deeper in terms of the message, but still the idea that a young lady, like in her teenage years or her early 20s, could create something so powerful and be able to speak on the stages that she has. Again, yes, she's a female, but still somebody important to introduce to my kids. And with that book in particular, again, it was allowing them to learn about American history. Again, we hadn't had conversations about Martin Luther King, but on one of the pages, there's a mural and it has a lot of his quotes on there. And I was able to say, hey, this was Martin Luther King, this, that, and the other, because it's just amazing, or it's going to be interesting in terms of trying to teach our kids about their history. Another aside, my child had a black and white day where he had to dress a certain way at school. So I put on a Michael Jordan shirt on and I was trying to explain to him who Michael Jordan was. And he was just like, huh? okay. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not doing I'm not doing well as a Chicagoan. But again, you have to have these conversations in terms of with kids, in terms of where we have come from as a country and who we are as a people, both American and as well as the diversity that we come from. But I mean, because the cool thing is our diversity is America and America is our diversity because we're one and the same. So I think books are an awesome opportunity to do that. And then the last book, which is absolutely incredible, and I just say go get it, is the what's it called? Beautiful Oops by Barney Salzberg. And again, it's just saying that it's okay to make a mistake and that we all make them. And from those mistakes will become awesome opportunities to create creative stuff. So those are my three diverse books that I sat on my butt on the library, just had books all around me. And those are the three that kind of came to me. But the library has so many resources, and it's the idea that you don't have to do everything in that clinic, but as long as you have community resources that have common goals and common ideals, you know you can send that child to the library and they'll be in good hands and have exposures to all sorts of stuff that you can't necessarily give in that 15-minute visit.
Yes. Dr. Keenan, there's a request for you to say those three titles again, please, that you're, oh,
Hey, get ready. They're awesome.
they're there. They're in there. Sorry, you want to reach out and read, got them going. There you go.
Okay.
Yes. Awesome. So how can we all collaborate together? Like we said, we have a diverse panel in that our backgrounds are very different, but all invested in early childhood, early literacy, and diversity. So across our different disciplines, how do we work together to keep this mission moving forward? Dr. Jindal, you want to start us off?
Sure. I mean, I think that there are some organizations like Reach Out and Read who are really trying to push the envelope on this issue. And, I'm involved in the leadership of that as well, and really trying to think about this. There's other organizations like We Need Diverse Books. But I think the reality is that, as Janae said, that there is more out there, but there's still so much more to go and so much more to do to allow access to everyone for these books. So, I haven't had the pleasure of working with many librarians or authors. So I wonder what you guys might need from us to help leverage some of these efforts.
And I was going to say, previously, before I started a little bit more in research, I was the director of the community rotation for the residents. And it was awesome because we did have residents go out to the library and participate in some of the programs that they have there. We've also had instances during health fairs and things of that nature where a library came and did a reading corner. So they brought their books with them. They were able to engage with the patients, and it gave the patients something to do and learn about while we were doing our event. And then also we have a community board, and there's a community board in both places. So part of that residents to-do list while they're on that elective is going into the community, seeing what's going on and bringing that back to the clinic, putting it on the community board. So as patients are waiting for their labs or they're waiting for their checkout, and sometimes that wait could be a very special, they have the opportunity to see what other resources are out there. Because I think the hardest thing to know is that there's just so much going on, but there's not one central place per se that everybody can get that information. So the more listservs there are, the more opportunities for collaboration. I think the better it is, and just making sure to go out into the community that you serve and meeting those stakeholders that care and are doing similar things that you are.
And I would definitely share the partnerships with schools. That's so important. And you wouldn't believe, professionally, I work in education, technology education, but there remains to this day a lot of pushback from schools as far as diversifying the school libraries. And so a lot of what Reach Out and Read is doing in the clinics is not even happening in schools. And so when you think that we do all this work for the little ones up until 5, and then they go to school, the expectation would be that the access to diverse books and inclusive content would continue, but that's not always the case. And so as an author, I try to make sure to invest myself in school communities and just let them know that this continues to be important, that it can't just fall off, because once kids are in the elementary level, they go into the library and they make their own selections. And what is it that encourages them to pull a certain book off the shelf? And that's where our educators can be involved and can kind of steer them in the right direction and promote inclusivity and just continue that trend as they are with our kids every day. And that collaboration will definitely impact them for life.
Yeah, and on behalf of the library, like I just want to let you guys know, like we're here for you. We're here to serve you. So don't be afraid to go to your to your local, your neighborhood library, where your clinic is at, to ask your librarian for feedback, maybe suggestions. If you see that we're missing something in our collections, we take feedback as well. That's usually when I was working in a neighborhood library, that's how I would purchase my books. Like, oh, so and so needed this type of book. We don't have a book on this topic. We should. Let me look and see what's out there, right? We're more than willing to partner up. Just let us know. Just reach out. We're happy to provide book lists. We're happy to provide any type of information that you guys are looking for, and also always happy to work with the families. Feel free to send them over. If that works for you, we'll go from there. But yeah, we're just here to let you guys know, like, use us. We're a free resource. We have access to a lot of different informations, and even just in the way that kids can access books, it doesn't have to be a physical book sometimes, right? Sometimes going to the library is hard, right? But did you know that you can look at the book in your tablet or on your phone through our Libby app, right? You still have access to that, to those books, but is it knowledge that they may know, right? So yeah, just reach out to us. Let us know how we can help you, and then I'm sure that your local librarian will be more than willing to support you in any way that they can.
Mhm. I know
And
in malpractice. Oh, I'm so sorry, Dr. Keenan. Go ahead.
And just wanted to give one more resource. One resource that I absolutely adore and doing great things in the community is Sesame Street in the communities. It's specifically targeted for that population of 3 to 5. It has topics for health providers. It has topics for parents, and it has books and activities on everything that you can think of, from divorce to having a family member with autism to having someone incarcerated. I mean, it's just such a wealth of information, and it's being taught at a level that is appropriate for the child. There's videos that they can watch that has not the Disney, but the Sesame Street characters on there. And there's also a link that if you would like to get a box of those books to your clinic, they will absolutely send them in as long as you're a nonprofit. So again, a great resource that I use a lot, and it's very easily accessible. It's free to get to. As long as you have a computer, a lot of times you can just pull it up in front of your patient or your person that you're sitting in front of.
That's great. And I know there's another local partnership that Reach Out and Read has been working with, the Young Black and Lit group. It's based out of Evanston, but serving people across the nation, and organizations, again, nonprofit organizations, can sign up to receive shipments of books from them as well, which has been great.
And I'm not affiliated with Young Black and Lit in any way, but they are fabulous. And I just will
Awesome.
share that I do know that for the next month of February, they are looking for volunteers to come and help them package the books that they send out and provide to students. So they're in Evanston. If you're in the area, or if you know of people to send their way, they're a great organization, and they're always looking for volunteers.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we are getting towards the end, and I know Reach Out and Read is sharing different links in the chat for different resources. I know Dr. Keenan mentioned sometimes one of the tricky things is there are almost too many resources. It's hard to know where to begin. So Reach Out and Read, along with the board and those of us in the community, have tried to curate and come up with lists that are directed towards specific populations and locations to help support early literacy. And it would not be a Reach Out and Read / Loving Books talk without discussing our favorite books. Although, in thinking about this, I always have trouble narrowing it down. So I wish we had another hour. We could go through all the categories and each name what their favorite is in every category. But since we're doing early literacy, what is your favorite early literacy book? How about, should we start with Janae?
I would say that I love all books, but Goodnight Moon, I always have loved Goodnight Moon because it's just so simplistic. And I think my son, by the time he was 2, was reciting it from memory. And I always say he's such a dynamic reader now because we read that book so much and he just fell in love from reading it.
Victoria?
Um, I can't choose just one, but I will highlight one of the books that was recently published, Big by Vashti Harrison. I'm not sure if any of you guys have read that book, but that book is just beautiful. It's about a little girl who was big, right? She was a big baby, and she was praised for being big, right? But as she grew older, those feelings kind of changed, and just like her journey as to her understanding of the comments that are being made about her, and just like how she finds her self-worth, and the power that she kind of gains from that situation. It is on the book list that they will share out with you, but that's one of the favorite, most recently published books that I have.
Mhm. Great. Dr. Keenan?
I think mine is going to have to be Beautiful Oops. Now, I kind of bought 10 of them, so I give them out as birthday presents because I think everybody should read them. And it's a mature subject matter for little minds that you don't necessarily usually talk about at that young of an age. In the world of perfection, where everybody is trying to do the best that they can, that it's okay to make a mistake, and there's a learning opportunity or something beautiful sometimes comes from mistakes. And me personally, it took me a while in terms of growing in my life to be able to truly appreciate that concept. And it's a cool book in terms of it has an alligator that moves, it has pieces that pulls out. So again, it's interactive. So my kids absolutely adored that part. And it's a great book. So I would say Beautiful Oops.
Awesome. Dr. Jindal?
There's so many. I mean,
Wow.
Porter is probably my like favorite childhood book, but one book that comes to mind that's great is Hair Love. And what I love about that book is it's actually, fighting a stereotype without explicitly calling it out. And, there's been studies that show that actually Black fathers are more involved in childcare than white fathers. And that was a study done by the CDC, actually. And so this story of a Black father doing his daughter's hair, I just think is a beautiful example of how books can be really powerful without being, totally in your face about it. But
Yeah. And I love, again, it's very hard to narrow it down, but in the early childhood area, I've really enjoyed the Elephant and Piggy books because I do think they give a diverse perspective across the series and do it in a way that is very neutral yet present, and teach lots of lessons around sharing and acknowledging others' differences and strengths and weaknesses. And I love the format because it goes between Elephant and Piggy, taking turns talking very clearly like a conversation. So when you're reading with somebody that has emerging reading skills, it's very easy to take turns, like who's going to be Elephant, who's going to be Piggy, and try to read through. So that's my current favorite. I think we are closing down a little bit, getting to the end. Christina, any questions we missed in the chat or follow-up things to talk about?
I have some follow-up things. I haven't seen any questions come in besides the ones we sent you, so I think we're good there. If you have questions, feel free to still put them in the chat, everybody. But we added all the different books that you all listed. I think a lot of people look into them. I was thinking like, what are some of my favorites? And I am not on this panel, but I'm still going to share. I really love The Blur. I can't think of who the author is, but that is a really, like, it makes me cry as a parent. And then Love by Matt de la Peña is so beautiful. And both are excellent books. Thank you all so much. So let me pull up my PowerPoint really quick, but virtual round of applause for all of our presenters today. I think you all did a magnificent job. Thank you, Brooke, for moderating, Dr. Turnock for moderating, and everyone for being just so sharing so much. I think everyone is going to be leaving today with a lot of thoughtfulness, and hopefully we'll be diversifying some bookshelves and giving people some good ideas for collaboration too. I especially really loved hearing the stories that you all shared of like the positive stories of where kids were seeing themselves in books and just how touching that is. We actually just heard a testimony from a doctor who we're starting as a team to try to provide more multilingual books, more bilingual books that aren't just Spanish and English. We've got Spanish and English. We have a lot of those, but a lot of the other languages, Russian, Mongolian, Arabic, like we're trying to expand those. And we just got really amazing feedback from a doctor who said that she passed out a book during a well-child visit to a child whose family spoke Russian, and the parent, the child, and the interpreter were all just like overwhelmed by how much it meant to them to like see that linguistic diversity too. So I think that's a whole nother aspect for a whole nother panel, but it is part of this diversity and representation conversation. So thank you, everyone. I'm just going to breeze through some slides now. So in case any of you want to contact our team, this is all of our contact information. So feel free to screenshot this and send us emails. I would also encourage you to join our newsletter. So Vina will be adding that to the chat. It'll just keep you up to date with all of the latest stuff going on in Illinois. And I will be sharing some resources that were kind of discussed today too. So we have a book list that Chicago Public Library and us put together. So we'll be sharing that out, and we can do that in a follow-up email as well. It was brought up, Young Black and Lit is an incredible nonprofit organization. They actually just send free books to people. So if you're a nonprofit, if you're a clinic, if you're a school, you can join their partner list, and then they'll send you intermittent shipments, and they're very great. So I would encourage everyone to do that. We'll have a flyer for you so that you can sign up. And then I would encourage you all to sign up for our webinars in March and April. Our next one is on multilingualism, and then in April it's on early literacy data. So it's kind of jumping into some of this research. So those are going to be more lecture style webinars, but they'll be in March and April, and both of those are CME accredited for our physicians as well. And then we are having annually, we have a site support meeting. So that's just a way for all of the people that participate in Reach Out and Read, whether you're a coordinator or a physician, come together and learn from one another, see what's happening, network with our peers. And so that's taking place on May 9th in Chicago at the Harold Washington Library, which is a beautiful space. So we'll have the site support meeting in the afternoon, followed by a fundraiser in the evening. So I hope you all can make it. We'll be launching registration soon. And then I forgot to include the Sesame Street and communities on here as a bullet, but we'll share that in a follow-up email too. I see the chat is going off. Is there anything, team, that I missed? I see some thank yous.
No, I just asked everybody to add in their favorite book to the chat. So I think that's mostly what's happening.
Oh, good. I love it. And maybe we can even compile these and share this out too with everybody at the end. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all so much. We'll be sending a follow-up email, so look out for that. And we hope to see or hear from you soon. Bye now. Have a good rest of your afternoon.